It's been 20 years. Your thoughts?
Well, I just went back to the Trout Creek Mountain 20th anniversary 2 weeks after a devastating fire. And you guys, that mountain is just blackened. It was about 7 or 8 days of continual wind blowing, dry, and the Eterion is one of the families. They're Basque, and it took me a long time to Eterion And our daughter went to Crane High School because we didn't have a high school where we live, and their kids from down in the Trout Creeks went there, and so we'd go to all the ball games and everything. Probably took about 10 ball games for me to get their name down, but anyway, they lost 1/3 of their cattle in this devastating fire. And they were going to have the meeting hoping that more cattle could go on the top of the mountain because the Lahunton, help me with my pronunciation, because if Doc was here, he would be helping me. My husband, who you saw in the film, excuse me, he left us it's been about 9 months ago now. He got pancreatic cancer of all the sad things. But we had about 2.5 years together, and he had quality of life, and we had a lot of time to say our goodbyes. So I didn't think I'd break, but I did a little bit here. Anyway, we'd do our talks together, and when I couldn't think of something, he would tell me what it was I was talking about. You'll just have to kind of have a feel.
I had the pleasure of meeting Doc a few times. I'll see if I can fake that.
But you know, I think one thing I wanted to tell you, and it was really fun. This is the only second time I've seen this, and Brett Lay, he's the one that had the glasses on from the White Horse Ranch. Well, here was the strange thing. Okay. Doc and I had the opportunity, before the Trout Creek Mountain Working Group, to spend about 3 years going with Wayne Elmore. He was Mr. Riparian and a wonderful man. We had the opportunity. He went around to about 7 or 8 western states, and Doc was to be the old tough rancher that was just obnoxious and horrible. And what they were doing is training young Bureau of Land Management folks to, how do you put up with a rancher like that? How do you put up with someone like that? And so we had more fun, and we went, like I said, oh gosh, we went to New Mexico and Texas, New Mexico and Idaho and Montana and Nevada and all these places, and we got to learn a lot of the problems that we saw as ranchers with the Bureau of Land Management, meaning that Forest Service and land, you guys have it hard. You were explaining a lot. It's hard. There's all these rules and regulations. And one thing we had learned from a group that came out to our place one time, who was the Isaac Walton League. In fact, we became members of them, and they'd come out to visit the ranch. And it was in the time when it said no public lands, cattle free by '93, and all those kinds of things. And we became a member of them to try to learn more about what they did. And they were on a tour out there by us, and that environmental group was just really nice older gentlemen who were really concerned about a lot of things. Well, maybe I should tell you about it. Doc wrote an article for the Portland Oregonian. That was when the book, it came up today, Sacred Cows and the Public Top, that was when that came out, and he wrote back a thing and said, well, that's what he has in his book is quite a bit of the truth too, but there's another side of it, and if anybody would like to come out and see our ranch and tell us what we're doing wrong, we would appreciate it. And by golly, we got a call, and it was the Isaac Walton League. Now let me tell you back then what I was thinking. Now this had to be 33 years ago or so. But I grew up in Colorado, fairly close to Boulder. And Boulder was where some of the first hippies came. Now, when I was in high school,
They're still there.
probably some of the same ones. When I was in high school, we would drive to Boulder. I went to Arvada High School, which is a suburb of Denver. We'd drive to Boulder and look at the hippies sometimes. Because they really were hippies. I mean, they were really, really hippies. They had an odor, and they were dirty, and they were, and it was just kind of, high school kids that think that was funny.
There's one.
Well, anyway, so when this call came from the Isaac Walton League, all I knew is they said, well, they're a conservation group, and they started in the Midwest, in the mid-country. And so here's what I was thinking. And we have a 3/4 mile driveway. We invited them to come out, and they said they'd be there Sunday afternoon. Well, here started this band down our driveway, and Doc and I were standing there, and I said, oh my gosh, what have we done? I said, and in my mind, I saw long-haired, dirty kind of people. Probably okay, they wouldn't be dangerous, but here they were coming down. That is what I thought. Now that, and I'm telling you this because isn't that ridiculous? But it was what I thought, and because the environmental community and all cows off the lands, and these people that were so don't eat red meat, and it was like we were horrid people, and so this was, who got out of the van were 7 of the nicest, oldest gentlemen you've ever seen in your life. They almost looked like my father at that time. I've aged some, but the point is, oh my gosh, here were these neat guys, and we took them on about a 3-hour tour around, and here's where I started to love environmental folks. We came around, and on our ranch, we're on the high desert, and most of our water comes from wells. And we've got them on solar wells now, but that's where most of our water comes. But when we first moved here, 37 years ago now, from Montana to Central Oregon, we had about 4 years of wet years. They only had 7 years of drought, so we learned. But the 4 years of wet years, here was a pond, and during that time, if you got a lot of snow and stuff, well, you had a little pond. And the pond was twice as big as this room. And as we came around the corner in the van, one of the Ikes said, oh, look at the duck. What kind of duck is that? And I love ducks. We have some duck. I love ducks. You know how women love something. Ducks or something. I love ducks. And they said, what kind of a duck is that? And I didn't know what breed of duck it was. And so they said, somebody said, well, I think it's a cinnamon teal. So I learned about a cinnamon teal. Then their next question was, how many little baby ducks do you get a year? And I said, we don't get any. And I thought what I just answered him was horrible. Why do we not have any baby ducks? And so this other guy said, well, we Ikes put duck boxes out. And sometimes that helps so that they'll have a nesting place and everything. Of course, in my mind, I thought, whoa, what are we doing? They don't need nesting boxes. What are we doing wrong? And so anyway, they gave me that snapped idea, and they told me what kind it was. Went on home, said our goodbyes. They went back off to Portland. The next morning I called, and at that time, Wayne Elmore was our wildlife biologist. That's what he was there. And I called Wayne, and you guys get in at 7:30, and I was one of his first calls. And I said, Wayne, can you tell me about ducks? And he said, well, Connie, what kind is it? And I said, cinnamon teal. And he said, well, he said in May they'll be having their nests, and they're out from those little ponds about, not too far, underneath sagebrush. And he said, do you have the cattle in there that time of year? And I said, yeah. And he said, next year, can you put your cattle somewhere else during May? I said, sure. And next year we had 2 batches of baby ducks. Now, because of that experience, environmental folks are my friends. I mean, look what they taught. I love ducks, and I didn't know that as living out there with them. I didn't know what kind or anything. So I gave that as an example of what it's like if the ranch families, and we were just talking about having folks coming out to your ranch and what we learned from those folks. And then they learn from us, but we don't know exactly what they learned, but they're excited about what they learned. Now I need to get back. So after that, we got this experience with Wayne Elmore to go around these different states. So what we learned was, or what I really learned was that, number one, the Bureau of Land Management, and we mainly just work with the BLM, their range cons usually don't stay in place very long. One reason they don't stay in place very long is because their salary needs to increase as they get young, they're out of school, they get a family, their salary needs to increase. And that wasn't increasing. Well, I didn't think that was very good. So usually those range cons went on into management as time goes on. Most range cons, and in our area, our range cons stayed there 18 years. And he had told his wife, I'm going to stay a range con, and we're not going to have very much money, but that's what I want to do. Well, when I learned all this, I thought, for Pete's sake, if you go to school and you're a great range con, you probably aren't a very good manager. Because think about it, you like being out, nobody around you, doing your thing. Kind of. You know, that's your life's work. But if you're going to go on up in through the chairs, I guess you would say, you become a manager. And then, 10 years is gone and you have another, how long is it? Is it 20 years most people work?
30 usually.
30 years.
In the feds, yeah.
Okay.
Manager's not always a bad thing.
Well, no. Okay, I'm sorry. No, some people are fantastic managers, but a lot of them are not. But to get the salary increase, they have to go up. Anyway, that's what I felt like I learned.
You lose brain power with pay grade.
Well, anyway, we got pay grade for Tom Forey that was in
That's
here.
good, and he did stay there long.
Yeah, he stayed there a lot longer. But I guess that isn't going on anymore, is it? Because they said they've had 5 range cons in the last 2 years down in the Trout Peaks. And when I heard that, I was so sad because it takes so long to learn your land. And if you're going to heal the land and work with the land, you got to know the land. And it takes a long time for humans to learn the land and stuff. So to me, that is a very sad thing that goes on. So I don't know what you can do about it, but let's try. Maybe you can have BLM management school and BLM RangeCon school. Not a bad idea.
This is the place to talk to them. They're right over there.
Okay. Well, anyway, because we had that experience, we kind of got to know how people work together, and it was so fun with Doc playing the role of the mean old rancher, because many of those folks, they said, you act just exactly like the ranch I had not long ago, and this, And one thing we learned, too, that many of the ranchers, and I love them all, bless their pea-picking souls, some of them, but I love them all. If you're scared, a man is not going to say, I'm frightened or scared. That would not do. But that's how you show anger for that. And it's a substitute for being scared to death that we're going to lose our ranches, we're going to lose our way of life, etc. So much of that is still going on now. And it's very, very sad. Well, when Wayne Elmore asked us to go down to the Trout Creeks because he was going to give this talk to them, because that poor mountain had been overgrazed for 120 to 30 years with sheep or with cattle. And the riparians had been all chewed out. And the ranchers that lived there, Richard Eterion, DeBatey, and Jeanette, he said, well, when I went fishing with Dad, the fisheries were just like this. There wasn't any willows and stuff, very, very few. So it had been just plain neglected the way it should have been used for years, and The ranchers were not really aware of it, but we all became aware of it when it was cattle-free by 93, and all that helped the ranch community learn a lot that we hadn't known or hadn't thought about. So that part was good. So here's Wayne Elmore, and he asked us to come down, and Doc was going to talk after Wayne talked. Wayne started showing his double slides. He had slides of, many of you seen them, something, and then when it wasn't as good as it was.
Before and after.
Yeah, before and after. Thank you very much. And Brett Lay and Richard and Steve Mayer and, there were a couple more cowboys came in, and we were at the little McDermott school, and there wasn't much space. It's a little bit smaller than this room. And they stood over by the windows, and they were all decked out in their buckaroo outfits, and that's what they worked in. Every time Wayne would show something, they would, when did you take that picture? I bet it didn't look like, rude. And Brett had gone by the bar, and he had a little bit of drink in him, which he shouldn't have had, but he did. So he was feeling pretty good about just talking right up at what he thought. And that whole afternoon was not pleasant because he was just being negative. You saw how unnegative he was there when he said, it takes about 5 times, but you just got to go to those meetings and work together. It was so neat. But let me tell you then, when this whole thing started, the next day then, we went up on the mountain. And I got in the different rigs every time we stopped. And I got in the BLM rig, and then I got in the rancher rig, and then I got in the ologist rig. I call them ologists, there's the water ones. And all of them were kind of talking a little bit different, and how this was the 3rd year they'd gone on this tour, and nothing's happened and stuff. So we got at the top of the hill, all got out, and Doc and I had learned about this circle, that if you talk in a circle, that's good. And I just started saying, Steve Mayer said, been the 3rd year, nothing's happened, you guys go away, things stay the same, that's just the way it's been. And so I piped up and said, yes, and I've been in every band, and here's what this one said, here's what these said, this is what they said, this is what, which was really not right for me to do, but here I am, a lady, and that's one thing, the ranchers are pretty nice to ladies, because they've been taught that you're nice to women.
You have to tip your hat, don't you?
Tip your hat. And so the point is, it got out, and people started talking up there and said, we've got to do something. And because Doc and I had also started Country Natural Beef, which is a beef marketing co-op, we learned some more about the circle. And how many of you in here have heard of Bob Chadwick? Okay. Bob Chadwick helped teach us. He used to work for the Forest Service down in the Klamath. And then the Indians, have their circle and their talking stick. And he's kind of taught us a lot of that type of thinking. And it really works with rancher groups. And what we knew, because of Country Natural Beef, is we need to invite the women to come along with the men to the next meeting. We bet they wouldn't come drinking, and we bet they would come with their manners, and they did. And here was a neat thing. We had this meeting, again in the school. Am I talking? I'm getting a dirty look. Am I okay? I didn't take that as a dirty look. No. Sometimes I'm not politically correct.
Just a bunch of men. Don't worry about it.
Anyway, so we were, let's see, where was I? I was
going to the school.
Women. Yeah.
So
women are key.
The second meeting, and here's the thing. Why I felt power is because when we went to those 7 states, I really learned that I'm a citizen of the United States. And I help pay all your salary. Because we finally started selling Country Natural Beef, and I finally started paying income tax. So I know that we pay all your salary. As you probably know, many ranchers don't pay very much income tax because we pay mostly, we go to the bank and borrow money. Okay, so I'm getting off here. So we went to this meeting, and we had learned about sitting in the circle. So in comes the people, and so the BLM, what we did as ranchers was, I started the meeting. I called and said, could we have a meeting? And the ranchers down there figured out where they could have it. And then I invited all the BLM to come, all the ologists to come. We knew we needed the Oregon Game and Fish to come. Who else did we have come? The people we felt we needed to have come that had something to do with that Trout Creek Mountain. We needed the Vail District and the Burns District. And it was kind of interesting because after we had about 4 meetings, we had to invite someone else that we didn't know because this Lahontan, he has the goal to swim in the Burns District, go over into the Vail District, and he went down into Nevada.
The nerve.
We did not have the federal people. What are they called now?
Fish and Wildflower Service.
We didn't have them at the table, and so we had to call and get them to come to the table. The point was is we had everybody there, and we had our environmental community, Isaac Wanton League, Kathy Myron, she was a lady with kind of the big hat and stuff. She was with Oregon. I've heard Oregon Trout isn't going anymore.
They changed their name and moved to another organization, but they're still around.
Oh, okay. Well, they were great help in teaching us what all that fish needs and everything. And then there was the who was another one? Mary Hansen with the Oregon Environmental Council, and she was a great facilitator and helped all of us do that. So the point is when we get together, there are those people. Well, I called the BLM, and they said they'd be glad to help put out the message that people were coming. I said, now we want the wives to come. Because we learned that in Country Natural Beef, we want the wives to come. Oh, we can't do that. I said, why? Well, they said, there might be a significant other or something. And I said, this is 20 years ago.
It's not Boulder, you know.
I know, just about what I said. I said, listen, folks out here, they're husband-wife teams. That's what they are. Let's get their names. The neat thing is the women had never been invited to come with the men, even though some of them are totally ranchers and do it all the time, but the men go into those meetings. The women hadn't, but they were specifically invited. In they came, and the men, gee, they were nice. They were very, they really were. The women were really pleased to be there. I mean, they had a name, and they were part of the ranch, too. So we sat in this circle, and we kind of started meetings like, how do you feel about being here today? And then what would you like to help have happen? Now, how do you feel about being here today? People can say. And in Country Natural Beef, it's kind of interesting because we really got to know our ranch families. For the first 11 years, there were 14 ranch families that gathered 4 times a year, so we really became close friends. And somebody might look a little off or something, and when it was their time, I remember one said, my mom just went in for cancer, and I'm feeling very, very sad today. And the point is that you got to get your voice in the room, and you got to say how you were feeling. Most of the time it was something nice, but something like that, you can look in a crowd and look at your friends and know something's a little off. But this gave them the opportunity to talk, and so we knew that was very powerful. And then what would you like to have happen today? It's kind of like, I've come to a meeting, they want to know what they're asking me. Why would somebody ask me anything? Who am I? But so those are the questions we ask. And the first time around, I know Richard Eteri on the Beatty, he was sitting about 4 chairs from his wife. And it was his time, he said, I don't have anything to say. And that was fine. But he just, I don't have anything to say. And he was probably embarrassed too. And 4 chairs by Jeanette, who is a school teacher. She answered the question we were speaking about, and she answered it beautifully. It was about, well, here's what we do with our riparian and what we're thinking about we're going to do on our ranch, and it was outstanding. And I wasn't supposed to say anything because they're supposed to talk, but I said, Jeanette, that was great. How did you know all that? And she said, well, that's the way we talk at home all the time around the breakfast table. And Richard sat up in his seat, And the next time it was his turn, he started sharing things he needed to share with all of us because they were really wise. So I guess my point is that especially with the ranch community, and if anybody has the opportunity, and there may be some significant others now, I don't know, but if they are, they're living under the same roof, and you could invite the husband-wife teams, the daughters and sons that are home, the different generations and stuff, and you can realize kind of like what this test thing was of where are you and how are you different. We did one of these in Country Natural Beef after 10 years of working with these folks, and boy, was that helpful. Oh my gosh. There was people in Country Natural Beef, especially one man, I adored him, and sometimes I just couldn't stand him. And now I adore him all the time because I understood where he was coming from when we learned his personality. And he'll always be like that, and it's fine, and he doesn't mean what he does that hurts me because I'm this odd personality, and but he never meant that way. And it helps so much. So these kind of things are just terrific. And I've probably gone over my time.
No, you haven't.
No.
We've enjoyed every minute of it.
Well,
Questions for Connie? Anyone?
I have a question.
Sure.
So are you still open, because I think when permittees talk to permittees and ranchers talk to ranchers, there's more credibility. And I manage a 5-district South Zone range on the National Forest. We're dealing with a lot of issues, bighorn sheep, and we're dealing with wolves, and everything's hard. And so sometimes I feel like if my permittees were talking to you, interacting with you, seeing your successes, they would be more inclined to trust. And so I guess my question is, are you still available and open to speaking with folks in that
I would love
form?
to do something like that. And we would have their wives and them. It would just have to be one time and show the circle, and then they get it. Well, look at Brett. I mean, he came to that first meeting just furious. And look what happened to him. He turned into a really nice guy. Well,
Collaboration.
Yeah.
No, and we deal with the Cattle Women's Association are always present at our rendezvous, at our tours, and so I'm wondering, but they don't speak.
Well,
They
of course
cook
not.
lunch.
That's right. We cook lunch. That's exactly what
So,
we do.
but you are still.
But in
open
Art
to-
and Country Beef, we switch that around where it's husband-wife team, and everybody in this circle gets to speak. So their voices come out pretty quick. It isn't just the men, it's the men and the women. And on the way home, it's great because, most of us have 150 or 200 miles from meetings. And Doc would tell me what he learned, and I would tell him what I learned. And both sides of the brains came out, and it's really powerful. And the women loved it because usually you go to something like that, and if I used to want to go to the Cattlemen's because I'm a horrible cook and I don't do good in the kitchen, and they'd kick me out. They'd say, "Hey, you can't go down there." It's really sad, but so this breaks the women. And it's a nice thing because it's kind of done. Nobody really knows it. It's just, well, you're supposed to have your wife here or have your older daughter, if you have a daughter that's going to take over, or, whatever. But we have found that that's the key to success in the ranch community or the farm community. And it's that simple.
Question here?
Yeah, I was curious. In the video, it mentions that there used to be 1,900 head of cattle.
Okay.
And
They
now,
were
I guess,
saying.
before the fire and things, there were 700.
Well, they cut down the White Horse Ranch, moved, and when they said 1,900, I'm not too sure about that, but they moved 3,000 of their head of cattle for 3 years off the mountain. They leased property over in Central Oregon, fairly close to where we live, and that helped this mountain heal. And some of the other ranchers did the same thing. And then our range con, Earl McKinney, he went down, they asked him, and Earl, I don't know if you guys know him or not, he's just a great man, but boy, did he give the BLM trouble. Anyway, he was always in trouble. And he went down, we asked if he could go down and talk with the ranchers, and he did. And here's what he did. He went to their kitchen table and he said, you guys are in a lot of trouble down here, aren't you? This isn't looking very good. Do you have any ideas of what you might do? And they answered him, and that's kind of what they did. they were able to ask the rancher, and they gave respect to the ranch families. And luckily, those ranch families just had a meeting down there, like I said, and I had nothing to do with the meeting. I was just invited. And it was the Mayer family who had it. There were 46 people came, all newologists, all new people from, they were all, and this is the thing, if the ranch community or the farm community can keep these things kind of going, because the chances are, and a lot of them are selling out too, so it's not that way all the time, but the chances are they may be there, so they can be the, and because we help pay your salary, we're important, and we can invite whoever we want to come to the meeting. And we need to think of that as citizens of the U.S. If you're interested, just call up, be kind, and talk to people. And I heard that today from quite a few of you. That's what you do.
And I think that's fabulous. I guess my question around that is, what incentivized the ranchers to get involved? I mean, I'm so used to people just being interested in pure economics. What's going to help my bottom line? Moving all that cattle, I'm sure, wasn't free, and I'm sure that it was difficult, and I bet it meant some sleepless nights trying to move all that cattle around and worrying about them and things instead of having them in the regular ranges and things. And so I think if we were able to pull that kind of incentive and sort of mirror that in other areas of the state and other parts of the country, I think we could do wonders. But
you're right, and we were very fortunate. The White Horse Ranch was owned by an absentee owner. And loved his ranch, had it for many, many years, and they did have the funds to be able to do that.
okay.
And that was pretty terrific. That really was the key of 130 years of overgrazing, is to get the pressure off. The other ranchers cut down on their cattle, but not altogether, because they're like the other ranchers that don't have a whole lot.
So what does it look like today?
So what's what?
What does the Trout Creek looks like today?
The Trout Creek after the burn is not good.
Right.
That burn, it even went in, they said the Lahantans are going to be okay, but it went to riparians and
Right.
pretty much burnt down. Oh, and the one thing about the baby willows and that was the neatest thing. Kathy with her big hat, she helped us learn so much about trout. I didn't know anything about fishing. And, she'd say you pick up a rock and you see those little guys at the bottom of a rock. Do most of you know what that meant? That's what the fish eat. And so she showed us, is it a good stream or not a good stream? Do they have food in there for? So we learned so much from her. But we had worked and worked and worked, and this had to be 10 years into this. And they were keeping cattle off the riparian areas. And we were on this one-year tour. Once a year we went on it. Went down by the stream and up the stream a little ways. And here's the stream, here little willows are coming in. It's looking good. And here sits a black bull up in the riparian area. I guess. And Kathy went berserk. She said, "You guys said you were keeping the cattle off here. One bull, one bull." And she said, "Look at that bull. You're not keeping cattle off here." And she just went berserk. Now to her, that's what she had to do because she was angry. And Doc, I had to kick him and get him out of the way because he was getting angry at her because it was ridiculous. And Brett Lay got really angry. And Kathy said, how am I going to have baby willows and teenage willows and middle-aged willows, and all we have are these old willows left? And it truly was true. When the Trout Creek started, it was only the old big aspen. I should be talking about the aspen. And so she went through all of that. And Brett said, "Well, Kathy, I thought you understood." He said, "What we ranchers want are baby ranchers and teenage ranchers and middle-aged ranchers, and all we have are old folks like me." And that was interesting. And Kathy almost left the group after that. She had other representatives come. And I felt really bad about that, but you have to have give and take in that doggone bowl. A bowl. I'll get in it, But that taught us a whole lot about what was needed on the land. And And right now, where the fire didn't hit, we've got aspens. We don't have middle-age aspens. We won't have those for a while, but we've got teenage and baby coming in. Nice teenage, they're up there. It is so exciting to see that growth that's come back because it's been taken.
And don't you think because of all the hard work and the recovery on the mountain, that fire burns through there, but now that area is so much more resilient to that disturbance.
Well,
than
it
had
should
been
be, I
previous.
hope.
So hopefully
But
time
have
will
you
show
ever
that.
seen a fire that goes clear down and there's not even sticks of sagebrush?
I have, and I was amazed in my earlier
Okay.
career that within the same time we were there mapping the burn intensity of the fire, that
Uh-huh.
some of the willows, in a matter of that short period of mapping, had started to grow back
Oh, wonderful.
at that very same
Okay.
time. So
Maybe the
Another
will.
chapter in the Trout.
Yeah.
It will be, and the ranchers now are, the one that lost a third of his cattle, the Jerry on the Badias, and Steve Mayer, they're trying to find places to take their cattle, and
Oh, yeah.
they think of them every day. It's been tough.
Well, Connie, it's been such a pleasure to see you
Thank you.
enthusiastically involved in that video production and that effort, and still enthusiastically involved in the Trout Fix now. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.